You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
Join us now for the expert source for inside information on the options markets. It's time for Options Insider Radio with your host, Mark Longo.
All right, everybody. That music can mean only one thing. It is Interview Tuesday once again here on the Options Insider Radio Network, the day of the week where we head on out to find guests and pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. My name is Mark Longo from the optionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, on the aforementioned network. Pleased to see so many new listeners joining us week after week here. We know these are trying times out there, so it's more important than ever for you guys to have a reliable place to turn to. We like to think we fill that void. We have been doing this for, coming up on 14 years now, so quite a while. So if you like what you hear, keep those reviews coming in your platform of choice, and new folks can continue to discover this program and indeed the network week after week. Of course, keep those questions and those guest suggestions coming. We do love to hear from you guys. And let's see who we're hearing from on the old Options Insider Radio program today. Our guest this week is a newcomer to the program and indeed to the network. He is Tom Gallagher, the chairman and CEO over there at Miami International Holdings. Tom, welcome to the Options Insider Radio program.
Hey, thank you very much, Mark. It's great to be here. I'm pleased to be able to tell you some of the things that we're up to and some of the rationale behind some of the things we've been up to over the last year or so since you and I met down in Miami.
Yeah, you guys have certainly been up to a lot. We'll get to all that in a second. But first, since this is your first time here on the network, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a little bit of an overview of your background in the financial space and how you found your way to becoming the CEO over there of Miami International Holdings.
So at the risk of turning off all your audience, so I spent 30 years as a corporate securities attorney doing M&A work and also representing high net worth families around the world in alternative investments. And I brought the opportunity of the MIAX story to a few family offices in the Middle East, explained to them what we were trying to do. That goes way back to early 2008. And we secured our first investment from a family in Kuwait City in June of 2008. Little did we know what was going to happen in July and August of 2008. So we represented a group that came in that wanted to start a stock exchange in Miami, Florida, thus the name Miami International Holdings. And it was going to be a listings business to focus on the global Hispanic entrepreneur, whether that person was sitting in Bogota, Union City, New Jersey, Chicago, Los Angeles, or Madrid. So it was a whole different focus than the options business. But I decided that it made much more sense to go after the options play first and then come back to equities, which we've now gotten to with the launch of MIAX Pearl Equities on September 25th.
That's a lot packed into that story. An interesting little pivot there. So let's start there back in the early days of MIAX. A lot of our listeners will probably be familiar with MIAX through their primary options exchange. Of course, the one that kicked it all off, the MIAX option, which is now known. Back in the day, it was called Miami International Securities Exchange, kind of harkening back to those early equities days of there. Of course, launched, that was back in 2012. You launched that. Then, of course, MIAX Pearl came a few years later in 2017. And the third entry on the options side of the space, MIAX Emerald, launched about a year ago in 2019. So let's go back to those early days of 2012, Tom, because you kind of mentioned you were initially considering this in 08, 09, as a one thing, catering to one very specific audience. How did the evolution and the pivot come around? You said, wait a minute, instead of just being this Hispanic-oriented securities exchange, we want to pivot and keep the name, keep the branding, but instead target this whole options thing. How did that come about, Thomas?
Yeah. So it came about in a number of ways, but in order to launch an exchange in 2012, you obviously got to start planning it several years ahead. So in 2009 and 2010, I looked at the pricing structures on the options exchanges and looked at the pricing structures on the equities exchanges. And I looked at what a lot of the other exchanges had done, and they launched all of their options exchanges essentially off of equities platforms. And I thought, why not go right down Main Street and try and build a very robust options platform where you're trading anywhere from 1.1 to 1.3 million securities. And if you can get that right, and you can create an ecosystem in the environment that we had going back to 2009 through 2012, I said, I think it would be easier to get into the equities business. I'd have more wind in my sails, more margins. So we pivoted to go into the options world. And then I sought to find the best possible team to build the exchange. And so about 10 years ago, in February of 21, it'll be 10 years, hard to believe, I secured guys like Doug Schaefer, Shelley Brown, Matt Rotella, a lot of great technology people and good business people that had a good background. And I said to the guys, how would you like to build an exchange group where we don't have to have a fist fight about CapEx, where if your CEO says to you, look, 4 million 4 million messages a second are fine. What the hell do we need 38 million messages? I said, how about if I enable you guys to go after some things like ultra low latency and ultra high determinism and give you exciting projects? And how often can you get a phone call that says, I'll raise the money, I'll help build a consortium of users, you guys just build it. And so that started a great relationship over just about 10 years ago. So I pivoted to the options world. And when you look at the performance of MIAX compared to the others, no disrespect to NASDAQ, SIBO, and New York, when you look at our performance over the last 8 years or so, I think that the reason we've had so much success is we absolutely had no legacy issues from day one. We had no other constituents to kind of, try and make compromises. And I think it's been a great plan where I think we've set the bar higher. And the other thing is, Mark, for me, the whole thing is about empowering your teams, keeping them, engaged, giving them new projects to work on, and never forgetting the most important asset in the company goes up and down the elevator shaft every day. I don't care about anything else, but it's the people. And if you forget that, you're not going to be successful. And that's why we've gone from nowhere to the 14th largest derivatives exchange group when you look at the FIA statistics through June 30th.
Well, it's funny you should mention you guys are coming up on your 10-year anniversary, which is crazy to me, too. I still think of you guys as the upstart newcomer here, Tom. How did it come to pass? It's already been almost a decade. It doesn't seem possible.
It doesn't seem possible. And I can tell you like in any business, the highs are real high in the beginning, the lows are low, and you hope for those days where the mounds are not mountains and the valleys are not steep cliffs. It's possible because we've just been focused, I didn't write a book about our success. I've not been on 60 Minutes. You guys have obviously never even heard me speak, but I've had a passion to demonstrate that even in a crowded space like multi-listed options or a crowded space like the cash equities business, If you just stick to the basics, you can be successful, but it takes time. I mean, I don't know of anybody that's actually built 4 exchanges from scratch. Obviously, NASDAQ, New York, and SIBO have bought a lot. They've been great at integrating them. We've built 4 and launched 4. So that's taken some time. You know, you go down to the SEC, you try to get them to hear things. You couldn't have picked a worse year to launch a brand new options exchange than 2012. When you look at the things that happened, you know, April, Bats had the problem with their own IPO. May, NASDAQ had the issue with the flubbing the Facebook IPO. July 31st, you had the night trading situation with NYSE. And in comes the SEC a week later to give me effectively a Reg SCI review. And they told me, Gallagher, we're going to hold you to a higher standard. We don't feel good about what's been happening in the exchange space, the downtimes, the things that have been going on. So for us to allow a de novo exchange group to launch, you had better have a very high quality team. You better have a very good plan for enterprise risk management. They were there for 2 weeks. The guys start asking their team to start speaking. I'm in the front of our boardroom. The guy says, hey, Mr. Gallagher, you have an open port to the internet. And I'm looking at the guy saying, oh, we're sunk. I've just raised $100 million. These people are looking at my internet ports outside my copier. And my CIO has a Cheshire cat smile. Doug Schaefer says, Tom, these guys have been here from the commission for 2 weeks looking at everything. They're starting with the copiers. I think we're in a good spot. And we were. They were shocked at the maturity of our operation, the maturity of our risk controls, the audit trails we had created. And from that day, the relationship with the SEC changed dramatically. And we've been able to get new exchanges launched and approval orders in record time. I'm not aware of any applicant in my career that's ever gotten an exchange Form 1 approved without a single amendment. We've done it twice. We did it with MIAX Pearl and MIAX Emerald. So, and it doesn't happen because we have good lawyers. It happens because we have a great company. And when they come in and they look at something, we're not catching up. We're living it. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but the 10 years has gone quickly. But launching 4 exchanges, buying a controlling interest in Bermuda, signing an agreement to buy the Minneapolis Grain Exchange, the days just kind of fly by, Mark.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that long ago. It was obviously over a decade ago when someone pulled me aside back. I think it was at an OIC conference in Vegas and say, hey, it was someone he had been at the Philly and said, hey, you have to see what these guys are working on over here. It's coming down the pike in a couple of years. And lo and behold, here we are a decade plus later. And you mentioned the success. Clearly, what you're doing over there is resonating, Tom. Let's just look at the options lens for a second before we get into all the other interesting stuff you guys have popping off over there. But just in September, obviously September this year, all of 2020 has been a boon year just for the options volume metric. Obviously other metrics, pandemic, everything else, a pretty terrible year. But from the options metric of volume, it has been a pretty impressive year. The industry obviously setting new records almost every month. September, yet another one. You guys are kind of one-upping even that. I mean, the options industry as a whole was up nearly 70% in September this year compared to September from last year. But you guys are pretty much double that, up almost 141% from September of last year, setting some new monthly volume records along the way. 36.9 million contracts going up in September, Tom, as well as new levels of market share up there with nearly 14%, 13.71%. Anyone who pays attention to how fragmented and contentious the equity option space is and how people fight tooth and claw for every fraction of volume going up out there. That's certainly some impressive numbers. What do you think is driving so many people to your door these days, Tom? Is it just the pandemic is rising all boats, or you guys have something else cooking over there?
That's a really good question, Mark. And I think, we built our exchanges for periods of volatility, never expecting the volatility that we've had as a result of the tragic circumstances of the pandemic. But I told Schaefer and I told Brown, I said, guys, I want to build the most robust system. I want to plan for the day when the others that maybe don't feel that it's necessary or they're not good at getting budget allocations for CapEx and OpEx from their chairmen and CEO. I want to plan for the day when we have periods of high volatility and then we can differentiate ourselves. And that's exactly what's happened, Mark. in the last 6 to 9 months. The firms who are interested in highly deterministic experiences have found that there's no comparison to what they're seeing on MIAX. There's no comparison. And so the other thing is, I'm selling the ride from Princeton to Kennedy Airport in an hour. And whether that's New Year's Eve, Thanksgiving Eve, or New Year's morning, they can still get a consistent path to our matching engines and back consistently in less than 18 millionths of a second. We're probably the only firm that publicizes their true speed and their latency on their website. So I think it's been the technology experience, and it's also been the sales desk, the help desk know our systems because they're involved in testing use cases. They have multiple hats. There's a fist fight when the phone rings in our help desk because everybody wants to answer it and demonstrate their knowledge. So I would say it's the investment that I have fostered in technology that's got there. The other thing is, if it's just about technology, I think we'd be at a higher percentage. The other thing is we've got anchor tenants. We've done these equity rights programs since 2013 where we're aligning the interests of the exchange with the members. And so as I sit here today, we're at about 30% of the company is owned by member firms of either equities now or options. And so there's a benefit to these folks that have the warrants so long as the customers are not prejudiced by not getting best X. So I'd say it's a bit of technology, and I'm not boasting because 10 years is a long time. And I can tell you, I was the guy that they were talking about at OIC who was, shaking the shakes to build this paper mache exchange out of Miami. And, there were a lot of difficult days and a lot of difficult moments to try to get to where we are. But I'd say it's about the technology first, the equity rights programs, and 3, it's keeping the team intact.
We could obviously spend the rest of the show just talking about that. But you guys, I'm not sure if anyone told you, Tom, but there's a pandemic going on. Everyone else we've had on the network has kind of been talking about how they're scrambling to keep their regular day-to-day functions up and running and dealing with their staff. You guys have been out and about wheeling and dealing, including, I guess you felt you didn't have enough on your plate in the options space, Tom, because you guys just launched about a month ago MIAX Pearl, your new addition to the equity space. So, Tom, what was it? You guys were tired? You thought maybe options were too easy? You thought you'd fight your way into equities as well? What prompted you guys to launch an equities exchange in a super crowded marketplace in the middle of a pandemic, sir?
Yeah, you got to be a little bit nuts to even do launching 3 options exchanges. So you got to be a little crazy to launch an equities exchange. I see opportunities. I absolutely see opportunities in periods like this, where if you've got a great infrastructure, you've got a very lean infrastructure. I've got 155 people, okay? When people like Euronext or LSE come in to talk to us about joint ventures, they said, where's the other 3 floors of people? I said, no, this is it. So if you can build and launch and operate 3 U.S. markets with 150 people and add 15 to 16 to build an equities exchange and bring the technology chops that we're bringing to the table, honed over the last 10 years, why not bring that to the equities market where I can be a low-cost operator because I am not, in a company with 600 heads. Our competition, as you know, have thousands. So we have an extremely low cost. We operate out of Princeton, New York, and Miami. And so I thought we could bring our low-cost infrastructure, spread it out over another venue, and see if I could create a new ecosystem around the things that we've been known for in options. Plus, I need to be able to cross asset price, and I wanted to create the value for our stockholders, Mark, of not just being a one-class exchange group. So we went into the options. Now we're in equities. We're then going to get the listings in the next 2 years. And then we want to branch out to futures because in order to make the options exchanges competitive, you've got to be able to offer some unique products. And especially everybody complaining about data cost and connectivity cost and those kind of things. Why not bring some innovative ideas? They're paying to trade. They're paying to be members. So I thought, well, why not have a futures exchange that we can also used futures products to help stimulate our options and equities. Thus, the Minneapolis transaction.
Yeah, you have a lot on the docket in terms of transactions. I want to get to MGEX in a second, but obviously you just launched MIAX Pearl. It's only been a few weeks, but how have those first few weeks been so far? Are they living up to your expectations? How has that initial foray into equities gone, Tom?
Yeah, I think the foray's gone well. Look, we're the one thing I've done, I think, that differentiates me a little bit over our competitors, MGEX and others, is when you're launching an exchange in a pandemic, you want to be able to stick to the basics. If you give them a date that you're going to launch your exchange, stick to it. If you give them a schedule of what you're going to do and how long it's going to take you to roll out, stick to it. And for God's sakes, don't try to do anything that is too aggressive given the volatility that we're experiencing in the markets. So I'm doing a rollout between the 29th of September and the first week in December, and we're rolling out modestly. And so far, what am I doing? I'm getting a chance to see the functionality of the exchange with different order types. I'm getting to see more and more members connecting. And so far, so good. Steady as she goes. We have an equity rights program. So we have 9 major firms that have joined the consortium. They prepaid $22 million worth of trading fees. And 40% of the units that were subscribed for were sold also to people that are in MGEX. So those firms are not only in MGEX, they're also in MIAX. And so the idea here is I've got a goal of 5.5% national volume in equities, starting with January 1, the program launches, and it goes for 42 months. So basically, in the next 4 years, if I can get 70% of my goal, I'd be happy. 3.5% national volume in equities with all the various venues, I'd be happy. So bottom line is we made our launch date. We're on track with the rollout. We have not had any operational issues that are concerning me, and I'm pleased where I am at today. In 6 months, I could give you an update because I'm expecting to have everything rolled out.
I expect you have a lot more going. We'll have to talk about again in 6 months, but that wasn't enough on the equities front. You guys also expanded on the international equities front, and you acquired the Bermuda Stock Exchange. Tom, what was the impetus there?
Yeah, so I want to pursue other asset classes over time as well, in addition to options, equities, and futures. And I wanted to launch a dual digital security strategy. Chairman Clayton has said that these securities are, in fact, in many instances, securities that need to be registered. And if you have so many holders of them, then the company has to be listed on an exchange. But the problem is, whatever the chairman says on the 10th floor can take 3 to 4 years for the trading and markets folks and the teams of people to come up with the rules for trading. So my approach is a dual approach where I'm going to go to other jurisdictions where possibly I could launch a digital securities exchange in a very highly regulated, comfortable marketplace, and I can experiment a bit while the U.S. Marketplace, as it relates to crypto assets and digital securities, gets refined. So Bermuda has some really unique designations. It also has one of the foremost Digital Securities Act called the DABA Act. I went down, met the premier, talked to him about our plans. They really consider their exchange a national gem, and they were looking for somebody that would be a good steward, wouldn't ruin the legacy of the exchange. It has a focus right now on ILS and debt listings, and we're gonna tune it up, and we're gonna over time put some MIAX technology, and we're gonna have fun with it, and we're gonna experiment with initially digital, and then some other asset classes.
So even though it's an equities exchange, you primarily view it through the lens of a digital asset or a crypto exchange, Tom?
I would say more on digital than crypto, but it's certainly something that I want to look at. We also have a minority interest in LedgerX, which was the first, crypto securities firm to get the CFTC licenses in 2016 and 2017. So I'm looking at Bermuda also to be a place where we could put up more and more international listings not only of debt, but of other security types. So I'm real excited about it. It's a great company, great folks. And so, it's kind of part of my attempt to become not only a domestic exchange group, but also an international.
Well, you mentioned, of course, obviously this is a play in the digital space. You also mentioned your stake in LedgerX. You guys also recently had a minority investment in MGEX, which is another digital asset trading exchange, I believe, focused out of the Middle East there. So clearly, all things digital, all things crypto, that's clearly an area you guys see a lot of growth and opportunity going forward in. So, Tom, walk us through why you guys decided not just LedgerX and Bermuda, but also MGEX, and maybe what you guys see the opportunities being there going forward.
Yeah, so we obviously have about a third of our capital from folks in the Middle East, and I'm very comfortable over there, having been traveling over there and know the families, know the iconic families, know the regulatory regime. And we're backing two young men that started MGEX with an opportunity to diversify, but also see if the platform that they build for trading digital securities and custodial arrangements with digital securities, if that can be something that I can use in other jurisdictions. The other thing is I have firms that are trading our traditional products that would love exposure to the Middle East. And we're working on some digital securities for products that are focused on the Middle East. And they wanted to have exposure to that. I really can't go into which of the firms, but they knew that I've had relationships and MIAX has had relationships since inception to the Middle East. So it's an attempt to also be in a region. There's incredible wealth. There's incredible wealth within a 2-hour flight of the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi. And when you look at the Kuwaitis, the Bahrainians, the Emiratis, Kuwait has a population of citizens of only 1.1 million people. Okay, they're the fourth largest producer of oil and gas assets on the planet. ExxonMobil, our largest oil and gas producer in the United States, is number 24. So when you have places like Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, where there's tremendous disposable income, you also have access to a young population that is willing to start developing an affinity for digital assets, crypto assets. So I want to be where there is a great access to a population of people that want to trade alternative securities. And I wanted to back somebody. Our co-investor in them is Mubadala. It's one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world. So it also gives me an opportunity to meet the folks from Mubadala and also the Abu Dhabi Investment Corporation. So it's getting to know some great sovereign wealth funds. It's also having access to an extremely active marketplace where the participants are likely to trade digital and crypto. And I also think that we may be able to share technology. And no better team than the MIAX team to help them solve some problems that we've already solved. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but I'm really excited about the relationship with MGEX, and it's something that I think you'll hear more of in the next 6 months.
I can tell the excitement certainly bleeds through there, Tom. I like it. But you touched on earlier, you've already touched on so many asset classes and we're already coming up against it. You touched on one earlier that is certainly near and dear to the hearts of a lot of our listeners. That's, of course, the futures space. You guys recently announced your plans to acquire MGEX, which is, of course, the Minneapolis Grain Exchange. Many of our listeners on the Volatility Views program may know that as the listing exchange for the much beloved, much anticipated return of the Spikes futures. So what prompted that acquisition, Tom? Was it just as simple as, hey, we're listing the Spikes futures there, so we might as well make them part of the MIAX family, or how did all that come to pass? Everything has a gradualness to it. We went around looking for a home for our Spikes futures product and also some other products. And I got to know the management team and the board of directors of MGEX, Mark Bagan and his team. The more and more
we talked about opportunities for more products, the more and more I thought it would be worthwhile to put the companies together so that we could have a platform. Not only could the existing commercial grain traders and wheat traders have a place, but also we could expand and create a place where financial futures would have an alternative to the CME and ISE. So it was initially out of a need to list the Spikes futures, but we got closer and closer, and I was really pleased with the interaction on the Spikes futures as we got started, and we've also been working on 3 or 4 other products. And I thought that if we want to have, in our case, our company, access to the public market sometime over the next 2 to 4 years, I thought it would be much more advantageous to be in the futures business in 2021 than building it from scratch and getting one of these rare assets. These are scarce. DCOs and DCMs, or CCPs as they're called, they're very, very scarce assets. Those licenses are hard to come by. It takes a while to get them through the CFTC. And I wouldn't get the credit for being in the futures business if I was really just coming to market in 2022 or 2023. So I looked at that and said, maybe we could put a strategic deal together with the MGEX seed holders. And, we've been on a tear since we signed a letter of intent in April, and then we signed the merger agreement on July 31st. We announced it mid-August. They had a shareholder vote, overwhelming support of the transaction. I think we give them access to capital. We give them access to technology. And also, I've probably got 12 to 15 people working on new products. And I think that's something that is invaluable to someone like the Minneapolis Grain Exchange. So I'm real excited about it, hoping to close it this year. And then, again, like Bermuda, we are going to ring fence the existing wheat contract and make sure that experience gets better, doesn't get changed. So we're really making a commitment to Minneapolis. It comes with a 400,000 square foot facility, and we're just excited about it, Mark.
Speaking of excitement, since we're on futures, before we wrap up here, can you give any words of encouragement or optimism to our listeners out there who are excited about Spikes and are looking forward to hopefully the return in the near future of the Spikes futures? What can you tell them there, Tom?
Yeah. So it's something that is probably my second biggest focus as chairman and CEO behind finishing up the merger transaction. And I'm in constant communication with the SEC and the CFTC. And I think we're in the fourth quarter of the game in terms of getting that back up. I'm confident that we're going to get it back up. When you try and deal with two agencies in an election year who have, collectively 10 commissioners, and it's a complicated issue, bottom line is that I'm hopeful that this is up and trading by the end of the year. And it's just a matter of, what day that will be. It's not a question of will it be. So that's about as much as I can honestly say to you, Mark, at this point.
That's certainly good news to a lot of our audience that we're in the fourth quarter. So hopefully we'll be talking in the near future about being able to trade Spikes futures again. Unfortunately, Tom, that music means we've come to the end of our little we squeezed a lot of living there into 30-odd minutes. We touched on options, obviously, but also equities, both domestic and international. We touched on digital and crypto and even what's going on in the future space. Didn't even have time to touch on your investments in, let's say, diamonds and other markets. You guys have a lot up your sleeves. We haven't even had time to fit it all into the show. That said, Tom, if there's something we didn't leave in, or maybe it's something you wanted to touch on, maybe you want to leave our audience with a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a tease of what they can look forward to coming from you guys in MIAX in the coming weeks and months. Now is the time, sir. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I think we're not gonna stop growing. We're not going to stop innovating. I think that you're going to see more announcements of opportunities that we're pursuing inside of the next 60 days. And I'm just honored that the futures industry has given us this opportunity to acquire the MGEX team. And I think you're going to see some really exciting products, both on the financial futures, and also you're going to see some interesting products on the digital side down in Bermuda. So thank you very much, Mark.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for joining us, Tom. And I also want to thank all of you out there for downloading and streaming, listening live to this fun program. Remember, it's a lot more than just interviews here on the old network. We have, of course, Education Wednesday tomorrow for all of you who want to bone up, or maybe you're just getting started in the world of options. Thursday, of course, we have the episode 2 of the option block, as well as this week in futures options for all things futures options. Friday, of course, volatility views with a little exchange known as MIAX. And it kicks off again on Monday with another episode of the option block, all the way through to another interview Tuesday and another episode of Options Insider Radio.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.